We all know if there's one thing Pixar loves besides lamps and Luxo Balls, it's cramming their movies with subtle things for their fans to find. Today we're going to point out some of the hidden Easter eggs, references, and jokes you might have missed in Toy Story 4. We'll also talk about those terrifying dummies that we wish we had missed, the Bensons, and reveal when they were originally going to show up, and no, it's not just in our nightmares. Before we jump into it, consider checking out our friends over at Behind the Screen when you're done watching. They have a huge selection of videos about theories that walk the line between informative and completely insane. Everyone knows that as part of its goal of amassing all of the greatest intellectual property in the world, Disney now has the rights to the Star Wars franchise. While many fans have mixed feelings about this, one good thing is that we can now see references to our favorite Star Wars characters in Disney films. When our heroes venture inside the pinball machine at the Second Chance Antique Shop, we noticed a few pieces of Star Wars memorabilia among the collectibles. If you looked closely, you might have seen some original Kennar figures of Ben Kenobi and Walrus Man. It's not quite the Star Wars Cantina, but it was still a pretty great Easter egg. We love when a movie can surprise us, but sometimes it's nice to see some tried and true favorites mixed in as well. Kudos to Pixar for making us feel nostalgic whenever we see a Dino Co gas station pop up in a movie. These have been seen in movies in the Toy Story and Cars franchises, and Toy Story 4 is no exception. Where else would Bonnie and her family stop for gas along the way on their pre-kindergarten road trip? You'll notice that in the Toy Story movies, the logo is an Apatosaurus, and in the Cars movies, it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And for those keeping count, the Dino Co logos at Disney's California Adventure features a Stegosaurus. Of course, we all love seeing Dino Co gas stations, but there's another classic Pixar reference we love even more. In the first Toy Story movie, Andy and his mother enjoy a meal at Pizza Planet, and since then, a Pizza Planet delivery truck has been seen in tons of Pixar movies. So many, in fact, that many fans believe it's a sign that they all take place in the same cinematic universe. But if you were looking for this vehicle on the road in Toy Story 2, you might have been disappointed. We only saw it in a tattooed version located on the ankle of Axel the Carny, who was manning the game where Ducky and Bunny were located. We know that the Toy Story universe has Dino Co gas stations and Pizza Planet restaurants, but some of its other attributes are much more unique and frankly hard to understand. In the early Toy Story movies, we saw that Andy had written his name on the bottom of Woody's foot. This was seen as a sign of affection and a testament to how much Woody meant to him, enough that he would want him returned if he was lost. But apparently Bonnie will just write her name on the bottom of any old toy because she does so to Woody despite clearly not liking him very much. If you're a fan of the classic horror movie The Shining, then you probably noticed quite a few references to it in Toy Story 4. That is, if you weren't too busy wincing at the sight of those positively unsettling ventriloquist dummies. When Woody and Forky first visit the antique store, we hear some creepy music playing on a record player. You might have dismissed this as just an old-timey kind of song, but if you're a horror movie buff, it may have sounded familiar. That song happens to be Midnight, the Stars and You, performed by Ray Noble and his orchestra, a song that also plays during the ballroom scene in The Shining. You might think that including a reference to The Shining in a kids movie is a little bit much, but don't worry, there are way worse references to that terrifying Kubrickian masterpiece. Ducky and Bunny treat us to a variety of different plans, which all seem to feature the two of them attacking a helpless elderly woman. What a family-friendly film this is! During one disturbing scenario, the pair follow the woman home before attacking her while she lays alone in bed. When we see her address, we realize her house number is 237, which is also the number of a particularly terrifying room at the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. The Room 237 homage was also in Toy Story 3, as the garbage truck features RM237 on the license plate. Of course, what would a Toy Story movie be without some big-name voice acting talent? Everyone knows Tom Hanks provides the voice of Woody and Tim Allen is the voice of Buzz Lightyear, but there were some exciting additions to the cast this time around. You probably recognized Keanu Reeves as the voice of Duke Kaboom right away.
Look who jumped 40 school buses and landed back into my life.
But did you happen to hear Betty White as the voice of Bitey White, Bonnie's toy tiger? If you thought the chair relegated to the closet sounded familiar, that's because Cheryl Burnett is played by legendary performer Carol Burnett. Bonnie's rhino, Carl Rhinoceros, is voiced by Carl Reiner, and Melephant Brooks is voiced by Mel Brooks. These Easter eggs were definitely for the parents. Surprisingly, The Shining isn't the only film by Stanley Kubrick to get a shout-out in the movie Toy Story 4. During a late-night heart-to-heart talk, Woody tells Buzz Lightyear that he lets himself be guided by his inner voice when trying to figure out what to do in certain situations. Of course, he's talking figuratively about his conscience, but Buzz believes he's talking about the actual voice which he hears when his string is pulled. So, when Buzz finds himself in trouble later, he chooses a strategy many of us are familiar with, and that is button mashing. Among his many phrases is one which says,
"Open the pod bay doors."
This is a quote from the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, directed by Stanley Kubrick. In the real world, a tri-county area just means a place is larger than a small town but not quite a bustling metropolis. But in the Toy Story franchise, it seems to refer to a specific place because we've seen it pop up again and again. In the movie Toy Story 2, we saw the toys head to Tri-County International Airport in a hijacked Pizza Planet delivery truck to rescue Woody. In Toy Story 3, we learned that Tri-County Sanitation is a company which owns a fleet of garbage trucks and notoriously employs Sid Phillips. And of course, it services the Tri-County Landfill, which is where Lotso and Andy toys wind up during the climax of Toy Story 3. In the fourth movie, we see Bonnie's family traveling in a Tri-County RV. Pixar knows its fans are obsessed with their content, so they're always including references to previous movies. While Woody and Bo Peep are catching up, her sheep Billy, Goat, and Gruff present Bo with a variety of items scavenged from the park. One of these is the cap to a grape soda bottle, which looks just like the one from Up. In that movie, this bottle cap was given to Carl by Ellie when they were kids and had a ton of emotional significance. Eventually, he passed it on to Russell as a sign of their friendship. In the real world, we have G.I. Joe action figures, and in Toy Story, we have Combat Carl. We first saw Combat Carl in the first Toy Story movie, but he was getting blown apart by Sid at the time. Rest in peace, soldier. There were some other Combat Carls in Sid's room, or at least pieces of them. Combat Carl's shining moment really came during the Toy Story of Terror special, where the character and his miniature counterpart were featured in a huge part of the plot. During Toy Story 4, we saw some thankfully intact Combat Carl figures, but these ones had a very familiar sounding voice.
Combat Carl would like to introduce you to his 1/3 scale counterpart, Combat Carl Jr.
That's because this Combat Carl is voiced by a real-life Carl, Carl Weathers. He returned to the role after voicing the same toy in Toy Story of Terror. While on the search for Woody, Buzz finds himself captured by an evil carnival employee. Okay, he's probably not evil, he's just a little bit over his job. He affixes Buzz to the prize wall where he earns the ire of his fellow toys, Ducky and Bunny. But action figures and stuffed animals weren't the only things players could win. Some of the less talkative prizes were some miniature instruments which resembled the guitar from the movie Coco. This could have also been some serious foreshadowing that Toy Story 4 was going to make the audience cry at the end just like Coco did. Or maybe that was just us. Now let's go way back to the 1998 movie A Bug's Life. Yes, the movie was released decades ago, we hate to break it to you. The city is made up of a lot of junk, and many of the items are named after the children of writers who worked on the project. These include Juju Litter, Hannah's Bananas, and PJ's Pops, a fictional soda brand. PJ is the son of John Lasseter, who worked on many great Disney and Pixar films such as WALL-E, Ratatouille, and of course the Toy Story franchise. In the antique shop in Toy Story 4, you'll see a few vintage signs advertising PJ's Pop, which is a nod both to PJ and his pop John Lasseter, along with A Bug's Life. Another way back callback is the infamous Luxo Ball, which we first saw in the Luxo Jr. short. It's been in tons of Pixar films over the years, including Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. However, it's probably the most well-known for showing up in Toy Story movies, and you know this one was no exception. When the characters look down upon the Second Chance Antique Shop, you can see the Luxo Ball if you look closely. Considering it's been in Pixar movies for so long, it really is an antique at this point, so the inclusion seems fitting. Now let's talk about yet another notable vintage item we saw in the antique shop in Toy Story 4. We all know that our favorite toys have to freeze whenever humans look at them, at least in the Toy Story universe. The jury is still out in the real world. At one point in the movie, the antique shop owner looks over at Woody, who's forced to freeze, but not just in any pose. He grabs an old red telephone and strikes a pose which is quite familiar. There was a time when you weren't a Disney fan unless you had one of these awesome Mickey Mouse phones, which features Mickey holding the phone in this particular way. One of the goofiest and most iconic paintings of all time is dogs playing poker. The piece of art has been done in hundreds of different ways over the years, and it's been spotted in many fictional universes. Toy Story 4 is no exception, and we spotted this painting in the Second Chance Antique Shop, but with some notable differences. More specifically, we spotted Doug, Charles Muntz, and some of the other dogs from the movie Up playing poker this time. Even though the movie features Bonnie and her family going on a road trip, much of the movie takes place in the same spot, the Second Chance Antique Shop. The owner may live in a house with the same room number as a particularly terrifying part of the Overlook Hotel, but her store has a meaningful address as well. Its street number is the number 1200, which is the same street number as Pixar Animation Studios' headquarters. This legendary animation studio is located at 1200 Park Avenue in Emeryville, California, just in case you want to send them any fan mail. In addition to working on the Toy Story franchise, John Lasseter also wrote and directed a short film called Tin Story. It features a tin musician named Tinny who is torn between wanting to be played with and not wanting to be destroyed by a young child. There was a tin toy book on Andy's bookshelf in the first Toy Story which says it's written by Lasseter. He's also seen in Toy Story 2 when Ham is looking for the Al's Toy Barn commercial on TV. In the third movie, some of the toys from the short are hiding under a table at Sunnyside when the kids burst into the Caterpillar room. In Toy Story 4, we see some of the toys from Tin Toy hiding out in the pinball machine located in the antique shop. While you might have heard of Tin Toy, you probably haven't heard of Duke Kaboom before Toy Story 4 was announced. That's because, and we hate to break it to you, he's not based on a real Canadian stuntman. We know, we were crushed too. But if it makes you feel any better, he was voiced by national treasure Keanu Reeves, and he is based on a real stuntman. He's an interesting Canadian interpretation of Evel Knievel, one of the most well-known stuntmen in the world. His white and red Canadian garb is a joking way of addressing Knievel's classic red, white, and blue costume. And back in the 1970s, the Evel Knievel stunt toy was a huge hit among kids, having many of the same features Duke Kaboom also had. So we know Duke Kaboom is a spoof of Evel Knievel, but so are some other aspects of this toy. Even if you're not old enough to remember the heyday of Evel Knievel, you've probably seen an awesome toy commercial on television only to be disappointed when you acquire the actual toy. They did sell Evel Knievel toys, and the commercials feature them performing some utterly amazing stunts, which of course the toys couldn't even come close to. You probably noticed the Evel Knievel reference pretty quickly, but let's see if you spotted this more subtle one. While Woody and Bo Peep are trying to rescue Forky from Gabby Gabby, you can see what looks like a piece of cloth with the phrase Wall-E B written on it. No, Wall-E B isn't related to Wall-E, it's a reference to the short The Adventures of Andre and Wall-E B. If you don't recognize this one, then don't feel too bad, because it was created back before Pixar was Pixar. It was made by the Lucasfilm computer division that would someday become the Pixar we all know and love. We spotted another older movie reference during one of the last scenes in the movie. Duke Kaboom finally managed to land a legitimately impressive jump off of a Ferris wheel, which looked very reminiscent of another notable movie moment. It was similar to the scene in the movie E.T. the Extraterrestrial, directed by Steven Spielberg. In this movie, E.T. and Elliot fly through the sky on a bicycle with the night sky as the backdrop. We were gonna say it was refreshing to finally see a classic movie reference that isn't scary, but then we remembered that movie definitely had its share of unsettling moments. Our pal Duke Kaboom did have another notable moment, but this time it came during a mid-credits scene. He listened to Ducky and Bunny go over another one of their elaborate revenge fantasies, and by elaborate we mean they planned to leap on someone again. But this time their plan involved laser eyes, which Duke had to question them about. When he was assured of course they have laser eyes, he responded with "whoa," which sounded just like when the voice actor Keanu Reeves said it in The Matrix. Seriously, can we all just agree Keanu Reeves is the absolute best? Here's one huge thing we all missed in the movie Toy Story 4. A short! Usually, at the beginning of Pixar movies, we can count on seeing an animated short of some kind. Sometimes these go on to become quite famous. After all, it's thanks to one of these that we have the classic Luxo Ball. But there wasn't one in the beginning of Toy Story 4, and fans were curious about why it's the first movie since 1995 not to have one. Sure, we got some mid-credit scenes instead, but why the sudden change? Producer Mark Nielsen claims it's a simple matter of limited resources. All the talent was needed to work on the movie as well as some other projects that needed their attention. So if they couldn't create a high-quality short, they decided it would be better to have none at all. Don't worry, we aren't gonna end this video on a sad note. We would never do that to you. We're gonna end it on a horrifying one by talking about those nightmare puppets one last time. They're known as the Benson in the movie, and they're some of the only toys which can't talk, perhaps because they're made to only speak via a ventriloquist. One piece of fun Toy Story trivia is that Woody was originally going to be such a toy until it was decided it would creep everyone out too much. Hey, it turns out they were definitely right about that. These dummies also bear a striking resemblance to the notoriously unfriendly dummy Slappy from the Goosebumps Night of the Living Dummy series. We know there was a lot going on in Toy Story 4, and you have to watch it a few times to spot all the hidden references and jokes. What was your favorite moment from this Pixar movie? Share it with us in the comments section, and then click on the subscribe button to get access to more great videos from us here at ScreenRant. Before you go, we have a couple of quick questions. Have you ever wondered why Thanos never used the Infinity Gauntlet to become best friends with Tom Hanks? Or why Peter Parker never stuck with his flourishing career as a YouTube vlogger? Check out our channel Behind the Screen, where we answer all the film-related questions no one ever asked. Bye for now!